In the scorching heat of a July morning in 1877, French archaeologist Ernest de Sarzic's pickaxe struck something unusual. In the ancient mound of Tello, located in what is now southern Iraq, the metallic clang that echoed across the excavation site would forever change our understanding of human civilization. For what emerged from the carefully brushed earth was a diorite statue bearing cuneiform inscriptions that spoke of rulers and conquests from millennia past. These weren't the familiar hieroglyphs of Egypt or the later Aramaic scripts that scholars had grown accustomed to deciphering, but rather the wedge-shaped marks of the world's first known writing system, pressed into clay tablets and carved into stone monuments by scribes whose empire had dominated Mesopotamia long before Babylon rose to prominence. The statue depicted Gudea of Lagash, but the inscriptions referenced an even older power, a civilization that had unified the scattered city-states of Sumer under a single crown, and extended its influence from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. This was evidence of the Aegean Empire, history's first multi-ethnic empire, established around 2330 for BCE by a man whose very name would become synonymous with imperial ambition. Sargon of Akkad. The archaeological layers beneath de Sarzic's feet contain the material remains of palaces, temples, administrative archives, and residential quarters that painted a vivid picture of Bronze Age urbanism and statecraft. Pottery sherds bearing the distinctive Akkadian style, bronze weapons that showed advanced metallurgical techniques, cylinder seals depicting royal hunts and divine ceremonies, and thousands of cuneiform tablets containing everything from royal correspondence to merchant contracts began to emerge from the tell. The stratigraphic evidence revealed a complex sequence of occupation levels, with the Akkadian period clearly distinguished by its distinctive material culture assemblages, including mass-produced pottery that suggested centralized production systems, standardized weights and measures that indicated extensive trade networks, and artistic motifs that blended Sumerian religious iconography with distinctly Semitic cultural elements. Modern isotope analysis of human remains from Akkadian period burials has revealed dietary patterns that suggest both local agricultural production and long-distance trade relationships, while DNA studies have confirmed the multi-ethnic nature of Akkadian society, with genetic markers indicating populations from across the ancient Near East. The excavation of Akkadian administrative centers has uncovered archives containing tens of thousands of cuneiform tablets written in Akkadian, a Semitic language that would become the diplomatic lingua franca of the ancient world. For over a millennium, these tablets, painstakingly cataloged and translated by teams of Assyriologists, provide unprecedented insight into the administrative machinery of history's first empire, documenting everything from tax collection procedures and military campaigns to religious festivals and royal building projects. The archaeological evidence for Akkadian imperial expansion extends far beyond the Mesopotamian heartland, with Akkadian-style artifacts, architectural features, and inscriptions found at sites throughout modern-day Iraq, Syria, Turkey, and Iran, testifying to the remarkable reach of this Bronze Age empire. Carbon-14 dating of organic materials from Akkadian contexts has provided precise chronological frameworks, while thermoluminescence dating of ceramics has helped archaeologists distinguish authentic Akkadian artifacts from later imitations. The discovery of Akkadian seals and tablets at sites along ancient trade routes has revealed the extent of their commercial networks, which stretch from the Indus Valley to Anatolia, and from the Zagros Mountains to the Levantine coast. Metallurgical analysis of Akkadian bronze artifacts has shown sophisticated alloying techniques, and the use of tin sources from as far away as Afghanistan, indicating trade relationships of extraordinary geographic scope. The archaeological investigation of Akkadian religious sites has uncovered evidence of syncretic religious practices that blended Sumerian divine pantheons with Semitic theological concepts, creating a religious framework that would influence Mesopotamian spirituality for centuries to come. Ground-penetrating radar surveys of known Akkadian sites continue to reveal buried structures and settlement patterns, while satellite imagery analysis has identified numerous previously unknown sites bearing Akkadian material culture signatures. The interdisciplinary approach of modern Akkadian archaeology, combining traditional excavation methods with advanced scientific techniques, such as neutron activation analysis, X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, and three-dimensional photogrammetric recording, has revolutionized our understanding of this ancient empire's material culture, social organization, economic systems, and technological achievements, revealing the Akkadian Empire not merely as a political entity, but as a complex civilization that laid the foundation for all subsequent imperial ventures. In the ancient Near East, the geographic setting that would give birth to the world's first empire was the fertile alluvial plain between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, a region the Greeks would later call Mesopotamia, meaning between the rivers, where the annual flooding cycles deposited nutrient-rich sediments that transformed the landscape into an agricultural paradise capable of supporting dense urban populations. The Akkadian homeland emerged in the northern portion of this region, in an area that archaeologists now identify as the transition zone between the Sumerian city-states of the south and the Semitic pastoralist communities of the north, creating a cultural frontier where different peoples, languages, and traditions intersected and influenced one another. Archaeological surveys using remote sensing technology have revealed the ancient course of the Euphrates River, which flowed considerably further east during the 3rd millennium BCE than it does today, creating a network of natural and artificial waterways that served as transportation arteries for the movement of goods, people, and ideas throughout the region. The soil composition analysis from core samples taken across the Akkadian heartland reveals layers of anthropogenic deposits that indicate intensive agricultural activity during the Akkadian period, with evidence of sophisticated irrigation systems that channeled river water through an extensive network of canals, levees, and distribution channels. Paleoclimatic reconstructions based on isotope analysis of ancient organic materials suggest that the Akkadian period coincided with generally favorable climatic conditions, with adequate rainfall in the northern regions and reliable river flooding in the south, creating the environmental conditions necessary to support the surplus agricultural production that would fuel imperial expansion. The archaeological investigation of pre-Akkadian settlement patterns reveals a landscape dotted with small farming communities and pastoral encampments, but lacking the large urban centers that would characterize the Akkadian period, suggesting that the empire's founders were able to harness existing agricultural potential and transform it into the economic base for large-scale political organization. Geological surveys of the region have identified the sources of raw materials that would become crucial to Akkadian craftsmen and builders, including limestone quarries for construction, clay deposits for pottery and tablet production, and bitumen seeps that provided waterproofing materials for boats and buildings. The strategic location of the Akkadian heartland at the intersection of major trade routes, connecting the Iranian plateau, the Anatolian highlands, the Levantine coast, and the Arabian Peninsula, positioned the emerging empire to control and profit from long-distance commerce, while the region's agricultural productivity provided the demographic foundation necessary to support professional armies, administrative bureaucracies, and craft specialists. Archaeological evidence from the pre-Akkadian period indicates that the region was already home to diverse populations, including Sumerian colonists who had established agricultural settlements along the river systems, Semitic pastoralists who moved seasonally between grazing areas, and various other ethnic groups whose material culture signatures can be detected in the archaeological record through distinctive pottery styles, burial practices, and architectural traditions. The environmental archaeology of Akkadian sites reveals evidence of sophisticated land management practices including crop rotation systems that maintain soil fertility, animal husbandry programs that integrated domesticated cattle, sheep, goats, and pigs into agricultural cycles, and water management technologies that maximized agricultural yields, while minimizing the risk of salinization that had plagued earlier civilizations in the region. Pollen analysis from sediment cores taken in ancient irrigation channels shows that Akkadian farmers cultivated a diverse array of crops, including barley, wheat, dates, onions, garlic, and various legumes, while also maintaining orchards and gardens that produced fruits, nuts, and vegetables for both local consumption and long-distance trade. The archaeological study of Akkadian period environmental management reveals evidence of early conservation practices, including the protection of forest resources in the northern regions, the regulation of fishing rights along the rivers, and the establishment of game reserves that preserved wildlife populations for royal hunts and religious ceremonies. Geological analysis of Akkadian sites has revealed evidence of sophisticated urban planning that took advantage of natural topographic features, while modifying the landscape to meet the needs of growing populations, with evidence of artificial harbor construction, drainage systems that prevented urban flooding, and defensive earthworks that protected settlements from both military attack and environmental hazards. The integration of environmental and archaeological data has revealed that Akkadian success was built upon a deep understanding of the region's ecological potential and limitations, with evidence suggesting that Akkadian administrators developed systematic approaches to resource management that sustained their empire for over 2 centuries, demonstrating an early form of environmental stewardship that would influence Mesopotamian civilization for millennia to come. The transformation of this fertile but politically fragmented landscape began with the emergence of a remarkable individual whose historical existence is documented in both contemporary cuneiform sources and later Mesopotamian literary traditions, though the details of his early life remain shrouded in legend and archaeological interpretation. Sargon of Akkad, whose throne name probably means legitimate king in the Akkadian language, appears in the historical record around 2334 BCE as the founder of history's first multi-ethnic empire, though the circumstances of his rise to power must be reconstructed from a combination of archaeological evidence, contemporary inscriptions, and later biographical traditions that may blend historical fact with mythological narrative. The famous legend of Sargon, preserved in multiple versions from different periods of Mesopotamian history, describes his birth as the illegitimate son of a priestess, who placed him in a reed basket sealed with bitumen and set him adrift on the river, where he was discovered and raised by a royal gardener before eventually rising to become cupbearer to the king of Kish, a narrative structure that would later be echoed in the biblical account of Moses and numerous other ancient foundling stories. Archaeological investigation of the city of Akkad, Sargon's capital, has been hampered by the fact that its precise location remains unknown, though most scholars believe it lies somewhere in the region between modern Baghdad and Babylon, possibly buried beneath later settlements or destroyed by changes in river courses. Though ongoing survey work continues to search for diagnostic Akkadian period remains that might identify the site, the cuneiform sources that document Sargon's conquests, including royal inscriptions, administrative records, and later historical compilations, describe a systematic campaign of expansion that began with the subjugation of the Sumerian city-states and extended through a series of military campaigns that brought most of Mesopotamia under Akkadian control. Though the chronological sequence of these conquests and their precise territorial extent remains a subject of scholarly debate, contemporary administrative documents from sites throughout the former Sumerian region show evidence of Akkadian bureaucratic control, including standardized record-keeping systems, uniform taxation procedures, and the appointment of Akkadian governors to oversee local administration. suggesting that Sargon's empire was not merely a loose confederation of tribute-paying vassals, but a genuinely integrated administrative system. The archaeological material culture of the early Akkadian period shows a blend of Sumerian and Semitic elements that reflects the multi-ethnic nature of Sargon's empire, with Sumerian religious traditions and artistic motifs continuing alongside distinctly Akkadian innovations in administration, military organization, and long-distance trade. Isotope analysis of human remains from early Akkadian period burial sites reveals dietary patterns and migration histories that confirm the historical sources' descriptions of population movements during the period of imperial formation, with evidence suggesting that Akkadian administrators relocated specialists and administrators throughout the empire to facilitate imperial integration. The military technology documented in Akkadian archaeological contexts includes advanced bronze weapons, composite bows, and siege equipment that gave Akkadian armies tactical advantages over their opponents, while the distribution of standardized military equipment across Akkadian sites suggests centralized production and supply systems that could equip armies operating far from their homeland. Sargon's military campaigns, as documented in both cuneiform sources and archaeological evidence, extended Akkadian control far beyond Mesopotamia proper, with inscriptions claiming victories in Syria, Anatolia, and the Zagros Mountains, claims that are supported by the discovery of Akkadian artifacts and administrative documents at sites. Throughout these regions, the establishment of Akkadian trading colonies and administrative centers throughout the empire created networks of cultural and economic exchange that would outlast the empire itself, with archaeological evidence showing that Akkadian commercial practices, legal traditions, and technological innovations spread far beyond the boundaries of direct political control. Modern archaeological surveys using ground-penetrating radar and magnetometry have identified numerous Akkadian period sites that show evidence of planned urban development, with standardized building modules, centralized storage facilities, and defensive systems that suggest coordinated imperial planning rather than organic urban growth. The administrative archives from Akkadian sites contain thousands of cuneiform tablets that document the empire's bureaucratic procedures, including detailed records of taxation, military recruitment, public works projects, and diplomatic correspondence, providing unprecedented insight into the mechanics of ancient imperial administration. Carbon-14 dating of organic materials from Akkadian archaeological contexts has refined our chronological understanding of Sargon's reign, while thermoluminescence dating of ceramics has helped establish the sequence of Akkadian expansion and the development of imperial administrative systems throughout the conquered territories. The sophisticated governmental and administrative structures that held the Akkadian Empire together represent one of humanity's earliest experiments in large-scale political organization, with archaeological evidence revealing a complex bureaucratic hierarchy that managed everything from tax collection and military recruitment to public works projects, and international diplomacy across a territory that encompassed most of the known civilized world. The administrative archives discovered at sites throughout the former Akkadian territories contain tens of thousands of cuneiform tablets that document the empire's bureaucratic procedures in extraordinary detail, revealing a system of provincial governors, local administrators, tax collectors, military commanders, and specialized officials who reported through clearly defined chains of command to the royal court at Akkad. These administrative documents, written primarily in Akkadian, but also including text in Sumerian and other local languages, show that the empire maintained a sophisticated system of record-keeping that tracked population levels, agricultural production, military resources, and commercial activity throughout its territories, enabling central authorities to make informed decisions about resource allocation and policy implementation. Archaeological investigation of Akkadian administrative centers has revealed standardized architectural plans that suggest centralized planning and construction procedures, with provincial capitals featuring similar layouts of administrative buildings, storage facilities, residential quarters for officials, and defensive structures that reflect imperial administrative requirements, rather than local building traditions. The material culture assemblages from these administrative sites include standardized pottery types, uniform weights and measures, official seals and seal impressions, and ceremonial objects that demonstrate the empire's success in creating shared administrative practices across diverse ethnic and cultural regions. Isotope analysis of food remains from administrative centers reveals provisioning systems that drew resources from across the empire, with evidence of centrally managed distribution networks that ensured adequate supplies for administrators, military personnel, and specialized craftsmen even in regions far from major agricultural areas. The Akkadian legal system is documented in cuneiform law codes and legal documents found throughout the empire, established standardized legal procedures, criminal penalties, and civil regulations that created a unified legal framework while still accommodating local customs and traditions in areas that did not conflict with imperial interests. Archaeological evidence for Akkadian military organization includes standardized weapons and equipment found at garrison sites throughout the empire, along with architectural remains of barracks, training facilities, and fortifications that suggest professional military forces stationed permanently in key strategic locations, rather than relying solely on seasonal campaigns by citizen soldiers. The empire's taxation system, documented in thousands of administrative tablets, shows sophisticated methods of assessment and collection that took into account local economic conditions, seasonal variations in agricultural productivity, and the capacity of different regions to provide specific types of goods or services to the imperial administration. Communication networks that held the empire together are evidenced by the discovery of way stations, road markers, and relay points along major routes, while the uniform format of official correspondence found at sites throughout the empire suggests standardized procedures for transmitting information between central and provincial authorities. The archaeological investigation of Akkadian royal residences and ceremonial centers reveals architectural programs that combine Mesopotamian building traditions with innovations designed to project imperial authority, including massive throne rooms, elaborate reception halls, and ceremonial courtyards that could accommodate large-scale diplomatic and religious functions. Modern analysis of Akkadian administrative practices using network theory and computational modeling has revealed the sophisticated information processing capabilities required to manage such a large and diverse empire, while comparison with other ancient imperial systems has highlighted the innovative features of Akkadian administration that would influence governmental organization throughout the ancient Near East. The integration of archaeological and textual evidence has revealed that Akkadian administrative success depended not only on efficient bureaucratic procedures but also on the empire's ability to co-opt local elites, incorporate existing institutions into imperial structures, and maintain the economic prosperity that made imperial rule acceptable to subject populations. Archaeological evidence for the Akkadian Empire's decline includes the abandonment of administrative centers, the cessation of official record-keeping at provincial sites, and changes in material culture that suggest the breakdown of centralized distribution systems, though the precise causes and chronology of imperial collapse remain subjects of ongoing scholarly investigation and archaeological research. The economic foundations that supported the Akkadian Empire's remarkable expansion and longevity were built upon sophisticated systems of agricultural production, craft specialization, and long-distance trade that transformed the natural resources of Mesopotamia into the wealth necessary to maintain professional armies, administrative bureaucracies, and monumental building projects across a territory that stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. Archaeological investigation of Akkadian agricultural sites has revealed evidence of intensive farming practices that maximize crop yields through advanced irrigation technology, including complex canal systems with precisely engineered gradients, sophisticated water distribution mechanisms, and drainage networks that prevented the soil salinization that had limited agricultural productivity in earlier periods. The analysis of plant remains from Akkadian archaeological context shows that farmers cultivated a diverse array of crops, adapted to different environmental zones within the empire, with barley and wheat serving as dietary staples, dates providing a crucial source of sugar and trade goods, and various legumes, vegetables, and fruit trees contributing to both local food security and commercial exchange. Archaeobotanical evidence reveals that Akkadian agricultural innovations included the development of new crop varieties, the implementation of crop rotation systems that maintain soil fertility, and the integration of animal husbandry with plant cultivation in ways that maximize the productive potential of available land, while providing diverse protein sources for urban and rural populations. The archaeological study of Akkadian craft production has uncovered evidence of specialized workshops that produce goods for both local consumption and long-distance trade, with excavations revealing pottery kilns capable of mass production, metallurgical facilities that process both local and imported raw materials, and textile workshops that transformed raw fibers into finished goods for both domestic use and commercial export. Isotope analysis of bronze artifacts from Akkadian sites reveals sophisticated metallurgical networks that brought together copper from sources in Anatolia and the Caucasus with tin from deposits in Afghanistan and Central Asia, demonstrating the empire's ability to coordinate resource extraction and transportation across vast distances. The archaeological investigation of Akkadian commercial facilities has identified harbor installations, warehouse complexes, and market areas that facilitated both local exchange and international trade, with evidence of standardized storage, containers, uniform weighing systems, and record-keeping procedures that enable complex commercial transactions across cultural and linguistic boundaries. Administrative archives from Akkadian commercial centers contain thousands of cuneiform tablets, documenting business contracts, loan agreements, property transfers, and trading partnerships that reveal the sophisticated financial instruments and legal frameworks that supported imperial commerce, including early forms of banking, insurance, and credit systems that would influence commercial practices throughout the ancient world. The distribution of Akkadian trade goods, as evidenced by archaeological finds throughout the ancient Near East, demonstrates the empire's commercial networks extended from the Indus Valley civilization to the Aegean Sea, with Akkadian merchants serving as intermediaries in the exchange of luxury goods, raw materials, and technological innovations between distant regions. Archaeometric analysis of pottery, textiles, and other manufactured goods found at Akkadian sites reveals production techniques and material sources that indicate both local specialization and imperial standardization, with evidence suggesting that certain workshops produce goods specifically for export to particular regions or for use in specific imperial functions. The archaeological evidence for Akkadian taxation systems includes standardized storage facilities at administrative centers, along with the tools and equipment used to measure, weigh, and record tribute payments, while administrative documents provide detailed information about tax rates, payment schedules, and the procedures used to convert payments in kind into goods that could be redistributed throughout the empire. Modern economic analysis of Akkadian administrative records has revealed sophisticated understanding of supply and demand relationships, seasonal price variations, and the effects of transportation costs on inter-regional trade, suggesting that Akkadian administrators developed early forms of economic planning and market regulation. The archaeological investigation of Akkadian mining and quarrying operations has identified evidence of imperial control over strategic raw material sources, including copper mines in the Zagros Mountains, stone quarries in northern Syria, and salt deposits along the Persian Gulf, with evidence of specialized workers, administrative oversight, and transportation infrastructure designed to move bulk materials to processing centers and urban markets. Archaeological surveys of rural areas within the Aegean Empire have revealed settlement patterns that suggest planned agricultural colonization, with new communities established in previously marginal areas and existing settlements expanded to increase agricultural output. While the material culture from these sites shows the spread of Akkadian agricultural technology and administrative practices to peripheral regions, the integration of archaeological and textual evidence reveals that Akkadian economic success depended upon the empire's ability to coordinate production, distribution, and consumption across diverse environmental and cultural zones, creating economic interdependencies that both strengthen imperial unity and made the system vulnerable to disruption when central coordination failed. The religious and cultural framework that provided ideological cohesion for the diverse populations of the Akkadian Empire represented a sophisticated synthesis of Sumerian theological traditions, Semitic religious practices, and imperial propaganda that created shared systems of meaning while accommodating local variations in worship, mythology, and ceremonial practice. Archaeological investigation of Akkadian religious sites has revealed evidence of monumental temple complexes that combine traditional Mesopotamian architectural forms with innovative design elements that reflected imperial ideology, including expanded throne rooms for royal ceremonies and large storage areas for tribute and offerings, and specialized chambers for the performance of state religious rituals that legitimized Akkadian rule. The cuneiform religious literature from the Akkadian period, preserved in thousands of tablets found at temple archives throughout the former empire, demonstrates the development of standardized liturgical practices, mythological narratives, and theological concepts that created religious unity while incorporating diverse local traditions into imperial religious frameworks. Isotope analysis of sacrificial animal remains from Akkadian religious sites reveals provisioning systems that brought offerings from throughout the empire, with evidence of cattle from northern pastures, sheep from highland regions, and exotic animals from distant territories being transported to major religious centers for ceremonial purposes. The artistic and iconographic program documented through archaeological finds at Akkadian sites shows the development of imperial religious symbolism that merged Sumerian divine imagery with Akkadian political themes, creating visual narratives that presented imperial rulers as chosen representatives of the gods and depicted military victories as divine sanctions of Akkadian authority. Archaeological investigation of Akkadian burial practices reveals social stratification systems that reflected both traditional Mesopotamian concepts of status and new imperial hierarchies, with elite burials containing goods from throughout the empire while maintaining local traditions and ritual procedures and mortuary architecture. The material culture associated with Akkadian religious practice includes sophisticated ceremonial objects, temple furnishings, and ritual implements that demonstrate advanced craftsmanship and the integration of religious and artistic traditions from across the empire, with evidence of specialized workshops producing religious goods for both local temples and imperial ceremonial centers. Administrative documents from Akkadian temple archives provide detailed information about religious personnel, ceremonial schedules, property management, and the complex relationships between religious institutions and imperial administration, revealing how religious authority was integrated into imperial governmental structures. The archaeological study of Akkadian festival celebrations has uncovered evidence of large-scale public ceremonies that brought together participants from throughout the empire, with specialized facilities for accommodating visitors, elaborate preparation areas for ceremonial foods and drinks, and performance spaces designed for religious drama and musical presentations. Carbon-14 dating of organic materials from Akkadian religious contexts has provided precise chronological frameworks for understanding the development of imperial religious practices, while archaeoastronomical analysis of temple orientations and ceremonial calendars reveal sophisticated understanding of astronomical cycles and their integration into religious observance. The investigation of Akkadian educational institutions, evidenced by school tablets, literary texts, and teacher-student correspondence found at sites throughout the empire, shows the development of standardized curricula that transmitted both practical administrative skills and cultural values necessary for imperial integration. Archaeological evidence for Akkadian artistic production reveals the emergence of distinctive imperial styles that influence regional artistic traditions throughout the ancient Near East, with evidence of royal workshops producing luxury goods, monumental sculptures, and architectural decorations that projected imperial authority and cultural sophistication. The study of Akkadian language policy, documented in administrative bilingual texts and educational materials, reveals sophisticated approaches to managing linguistic diversity within the empire, with Akkadian serving as the administrative language, while local languages were preserved for regional use and religious practice. Modern anthropological analysis of Akkadian cultural practices, based on archaeological evidence and textual sources, has revealed the empire's success in creating shared cultural institutions while maintaining regional diversity, demonstrating early forms of multiculturalism that would influence imperial policy throughout the ancient world. The archaeological investigation of Akkadian intellectual achievements, including mathematical texts, astronomical observations, and technical manuals found in temple and palace archives, reveals significant contributions to human knowledge in fields ranging from engineering and medicine to literature and law, with innovations that would influence Mesopotamian civilization for centuries. After the empire's collapse, the integration of archaeological and textual evidence has shown that Akkadian cultural policy was characterized by pragmatic flexibility that co-opted existing traditions while promoting imperial values, creating cultural synthesis that strengthened imperial unity without destroying the diversity. That was one of the empire's greatest strengths. The military organization and warfare techniques that enabled Akkadian expansion and territorial control represent significant innovations in Bronze Age military technology, tactical doctrine, and strategic planning that would influence armed conflict throughout the ancient Near East. For centuries after the empire's collapse, archaeological investigation of Akkadian military sites has revealed evidence of professional armies, equipped with standardized weapons and armor, supported by sophisticated logistics systems, and trained in coordinated tactical formations that gave them decisive advantages over opponents who relied on traditional city-state militias or tribal war bands. The metallurgical analysis of weapons recovered from Akkadian archaeological contexts demonstrates advanced bronze working techniques that produce superior cutting edges, more durable spear points, and lighter yet stronger protective equipment, while the standardized dimensions and manufacturing techniques evident in military equipment suggest centralized production systems that could outfit large armies with uniform gear. Excavations at Akkadian military installations have uncovered evidence of permanent garrisons, training facilities, weapon storage areas, and administrative centers that supported professional military forces stationed throughout the empire, representing a significant departure from earlier Mesopotamian military organization that relied primarily on seasonal campaigns by citizen soldiers. The archaeological study of Akkadian siege warfare reveals technological innovations, including mobile assault towers, battering rams, undermining techniques, and coordinated assault tactics that enabled Akkadian forces to capture heavily fortified cities that had previously been considered impregnable. Administrative archives from military sites contain cuneiform tablets, documenting military recruitment procedures, training programs, supply requirements, and campaign planning, providing unprecedented insight into the organizational complexity required to maintain effective military forces across such an extensive empire. Isotope analysis of human remains from Akkadian military cemeteries reveals dietary patterns and geographic origins that confirm textual evidence for professional soldiers drawn from throughout the empire, with evidence of military service as a path to social advancement that attracted recruits from diverse ethnic and regional backgrounds. The archaeological investigation of Akkadian military engineering projects, including fortifications, road systems, and communication networks, demonstrates sophisticated understanding of strategic geography and the infrastructure requirements for projecting military power across vast distances. Carbon-14 dating of military equipment and fortification construction has provided precise, chronological frameworks for understanding the development of Akkadian military capabilities and their evolution in response to changing tactical requirements and technological innovations. The study of Akkadian military campaigns, documented in both royal inscriptions and archaeological evidence of destruction and reconstruction at target sites, reveals systematic strategic planning that coordinated military, political, and economic objectives to maximize the effectiveness of imperial expansion. Archaeological evidence for Akkadian naval capabilities includes harbor installations, shipbuilding facilities, and maritime equipment that supported river and coastal operations, enabling military operations along the major waterways that served as crucial transportation and communication arteries throughout the empire. The distribution of Akkadian military equipment and fortification styles throughout the ancient Near East demonstrates the influence of Akkadian military innovations on regional military development, with archaeological evidence showing the adoption of Akkadian weapons technology, tactical concepts, and fortification design by both allied and enemy forces. Modern military analysis of Akkadian tactical doctrine, based on archaeological evidence and textual sources, has revealed sophisticated understanding of combined arms operations, coordinated infantry and cavalry tactics, and the integration of siege equipment with field army operations. The archaeological investigation of Akkadian military intelligence and communication systems has uncovered evidence of signal stations, courier networks, and information gathering procedures that enabled central command to coordinate military operations across the empire's vast territories. Archaeological evidence for the social and economic impact of Akkadian military organization includes changes in settlement patterns around military installations, evidence of military veterans receiving land grants in frontier regions, and the development of specialized industries to support military requirements. The study of Akkadian military logistics, documented in administrative archives and archaeological evidence of supply depots and transportation infrastructure, reveals sophisticated understanding of the resource requirements for maintaining effective military forces and the organizational systems necessary to meet those requirements. Archaeological investigation of the decline of Akkadian military effectiveness has revealed evidence of equipment standardization breakdown, garrison abandonment, and the adoption of defensive rather than offensive strategies, suggesting that military deterioration played a crucial role in the empire's eventual collapse and fragmentation into successor states. The artistic and architectural achievements of the Akkadian Empire represent a revolutionary synthesis of Mesopotamian cultural traditions with imperial innovations that created distinctive styles and monumental building programs that would influence Near Eastern art and architecture for centuries after the empire's political collapse. Archaeological excavation of Akkadian royal residences, temple complexes, and public buildings has revealed sophisticated architectural planning that combine traditional Mesopotamian building techniques with innovative design elements reflecting imperial ideology and administrative requirements, including expanded throne rooms capable of accommodating large-scale diplomatic ceremonies, elaborate storage facilities for tribute and trade goods, and specialized spaces for the performance of state rituals that legitimized imperial authority. The material analysis of Akkadian architectural elements, including fired bricks, decorative tiles, carved stone reliefs, and metal fittings, demonstrates advanced construction techniques and the coordinated use of materials from throughout the empire, with evidence of standardized building modules, uniform quality control procedures, and specialized craft workshops producing architectural components for imperial construction projects. Artistic production during the Akkadian period, as evidenced by sculptures, relief carvings, cylinder seals, jewelry, and decorative objects found at sites throughout the former empire, shows the development of distinctive imperial styles that merged Sumerian iconographic traditions with Semitic cultural themes, creating visual narratives that projected imperial power, while accommodating regional artistic preferences. The famous Victory Stele of Naram-Sin, discovered in the 19th century and now housed in the Louvre Museum, exemplifies Akkadian royal art with its innovative compositional techniques, sophisticated carving methods, and iconographic program that presents the king as a divine figure leading his armies to victory over mountain peoples, representing a significant departure from earlier Mesopotamian artistic conventions that typically showed rulers in more humble poses before the gods. Archaeological investigation of Akkadian craft workshops has revealed evidence of specialized production facilities that created luxury goods for both local consumption and international trade, including metalworking shops that produce sophisticated bronze objects, textile workshops that created elaborate fabrics and garments, and pottery kilns that manufactured both utilitarian vessels and decorative ceramics. The technological analysis of Akkadian artistic productions reveals significant innovations in manufacturing techniques, including lost wax bronze casting methods that enabled the production of complex three-dimensional sculptures, advanced glazing, techniques that created brilliantly colored ceramic surfaces, and sophisticated stone carving tools that allowed for unprecedented detail and relief sculptures, and architectural decoration. Isotope analysis of raw materials used in Akkadian artistic production has revealed extensive trade networks that brought precious metals from Anatolia, semi-precious stones from Iran and Afghanistan, exotic woods from the Levantine mountains, and specialized pigments from sources throughout the known world, demonstrating the global scope of imperial resource acquisition for artistic purposes. The archaeological study of Akkadian urban planning reveals sophisticated approaches to city design that integrated functional requirements with aesthetic considerations, including broad ceremonial avenues that connected major building complexes, public spaces designed for large-scale gatherings, and residential districts that accommodated diverse populations, while maintaining social hierarchies. Administrative documents from Akkadian artistic workshops provide detailed information about production procedures, material costs, worker specialization, and the commissioning processes for major artistic projects, revealing the complex organizational requirements for imperial cultural production. The iconographic analysis of Akkadian artistic themes reveals the development of imperial propaganda systems that use visual imagery to communicate political messages, religious concepts, and cultural values to diverse audiences throughout the empire, with standardized symbolic elements appearing in regional variations across different artistic media. Archaeological evidence for Akkadian influence on regional artistic traditions includes the adoption of imperial artistic styles, iconographic themes, and production techniques by local workshops throughout the ancient Near East, demonstrating the cultural impact of imperial artistic production. Beyond the boundaries of direct political control, modern art historical analysis of Akkadian aesthetic achievements has revealed sophisticated understanding of proportion, symmetry, narrative composition, and symbolic representation that influenced artistic development throughout the ancient world, with particular impact on later Assyrian, Babylonian, and Persian imperial art. The archaeological investigation of Akkadian architectural engineering reveals advanced understanding of structural mechanics, water management, and environmental control that enabled the construction of monumental buildings, capable of withstanding both natural disasters and military assault, while providing comfortable interior environments for their users. The study of Akkadian decorative arts, including wall paintings, mosaic floors, and ornamental metalwork found at palace and temple sites, demonstrates sophisticated aesthetic sensibilities and technical capabilities that created interior environments of extraordinary beauty and luxury. Archaeological evidence for the preservation and transmission of Akkadian artistic traditions includes the discovery of pattern books, apprentice training materials, and workshop records that show how artistic knowledge was maintained and passed on to succeeding generations, contributing to the longevity of imperial cultural influence. The extensive networks of trade and diplomatic relationships that connected the Akkadian Empire to civilizations throughout the ancient world represent one of the most remarkable achievements in Bronze Age international relations, creating economic interdependencies and cultural exchange systems that continue to influence ancient Near Eastern civilization. Long after the empire's political collapse, archaeological evidence for Akkadian commercial activities includes the discovery of standardized weights and measures, commercial contracts written in cuneiform script, and trading posts established at strategic locations along major trade routes, demonstrating the empire's role as a crucial intermediary in the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies between distant civilizations. The material analysis of trade goods found at Akkadian sites reveals the extraordinary geographic scope of imperial commercial networks, with luxury items from the Indus Valley civilization appearing alongside Baltic amber, African ivory, and Anatolian silver, indicating trade relationships that span the entire known world and establish the Akkadian Empire as the central hub of international commerce. Administrative archives from Akkadian commercial centers contain thousands of cuneiform tablets, documenting business partnerships, shipping contracts, insurance agreements, and dispute resolution procedures that reveal sophisticated understanding of international commerce and the legal frameworks necessary to conduct business across cultural and linguistic boundaries. Isotope analysis of imported goods found at Akkadian archaeological sites has enabled researchers to identify specific source locations for raw materials and finished products, confirming textual evidence for trade relationships and revealing previously unknown commercial connections with distant regions. The archaeological investigation of Akkadian harbor facilities, warehouse complexes, and transport infrastructure has uncovered evidence of large-scale commercial operations that could handle bulk commodities, luxury goods, and diplomatic gifts, with specialized storage areas, loading equipment, and security systems that protected valuable merchandise during transport and storage. Diplomatic correspondence preserved in cuneiform archives provides detailed information about Akkadian relationships with neighboring powers, including treaty negotiations, marriage alliances, territorial agreements, and the exchange of royal gifts that maintained peaceful relationships and facilitated commercial cooperation. The study of Akkadian diplomatic practices, documented in both textual sources and archaeological evidence of royal exchanges, reveals sophisticated understanding of international law, ceremonial protocol, and the symbolic systems that govern relationships between sovereign powers in the ancient world. Archaeological evidence for Akkadian influence on international standards includes the widespread adoption of Akkadian weight and measure systems, commercial practices, legal procedures, and administrative techniques by trading partners throughout the ancient Near East, demonstrating the empire's role in creating unified systems that facilitated interregional exchange. The technological analysis of goods produced for international trade reveals Akkadian innovations in manufacturing techniques, quality control procedures, and product standardization that enabled mass production of goods suitable for export to diverse markets with varying cultural preferences and technical requirements. Modern economic analysis of Akkadian commercial practices has revealed sophisticated understanding of market dynamics, price mechanisms, and the effects of supply disruptions on international trade, with evidence suggesting that Akkadian merchants developed early forms of market intelligence gathering and risk assessment that enabled them to adapt quickly to changing commercial conditions. The archaeological investigation of Akkadian diplomatic missions has uncovered evidence of permanent embassies, diplomatic residences, and ceremonial facilities established in foreign capitals, demonstrating the empire's commitment to maintaining continuous diplomatic relationships, rather than relying solely on occasional missions for specific purposes. Cultural exchange facilitated by Akkadian trade and diplomatic networks is evidenced by the appearance of foreign artistic styles, religious practices, and technological innovations at Akkadian sites, while Akkadian cultural elements appear throughout the ancient world, creating syncretic traditions that blended imperial and local elements. The study of Akkadian influence on international law reveals the empire's role in developing standardized procedures for treaty negotiation, dispute resolution, and commercial regulation that would influence diplomatic practice throughout the ancient Near East, with Akkadian legal concepts and administrative procedures being adopted by successor states and regional powers. The period of Akkadian imperial expansion and territorial consolidation that reached its apex under Naram-Sin, the fourth ruler of the Akkadian dynasty, represents the zenith of Bronze Age imperial achievement, with archaeological evidence revealing a highly sophisticated state system that controlled territory from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea, and from the Zagros Mountains to the Anatolian highlands. The reign of Naram-Sin, which lasted from approximately 2000 to 154 to 2000 to 118 BCE according to current chronological reconstructions, based on radiocarbon dating and astronomical observations, witnessed unprecedented territorial expansion, administrative innovation, and cultural synthesis that transformed the Akkadian Empire into the ancient world's first truly international power. Archaeological excavation of sites associated with Naram-Sin's campaigns has revealed evidence of systematic military operations that employed advanced siege techniques, coordinated multi-front strategies, and sophisticated logistical support, systems capable of maintaining armies in the field for extended periods across vast distances from their home bases. The famous victory stele of Naram-Sin, discovered at Susa but originally erected to commemorate his victories over the Lulubi mountain peoples, demonstrates not only advanced artistic techniques but also revolutionary iconographic concepts that presented the king as a divine figure, wearing the horn crown traditionally reserved for gods and depicted at a scale larger than both his soldiers and his enemies, representing a significant departure from traditional Mesopotamian concepts of royal authority. Administrative documents from Naram-Sin's reign, preserved in cuneiform archives throughout the former empire, reveal sophisticated governmental systems that coordinated policy implementation across diverse cultural and geographic regions, with evidence of standardized administrative procedures, uniform legal codes, and integrated economic planning that created unprecedented levels of imperial unity. The archaeological investigation of building projects undertaken during Naram-Sin's reign has uncovered evidence of massive construction programs that included palace complexes, temple renovations, fortification systems, and infrastructure projects that demonstrate both the empire's wealth and its organizational capacity to mobilize resources for large-scale public works. Isotope analysis of human remains from Naram-Sin period burial sites reveals population movements and demographic changes that reflect the empire's expansion, with evidence of administrators, soldiers, merchants, and craftsmen from throughout the Akkadian territories being relocated to serve imperial needs in distant provinces. The territorial extent of Naram-Sin's empire, as documented through archaeological surveys and the distribution of Akkadian material culture, encompassed an area of approximately 800,000 square kilometers, making it larger than any previous political entity in human history and establishing precedents for imperial organization that would influence state formation throughout the ancient world. Carbon-14 dating of construction projects and administrative documents has provided precise chronological frameworks for understanding the sequence of territorial expansion and administrative consolidation during Naram-Sin's reign, revealing systematic approaches to imperial growth that balance military conquest with political integration and economic development. The cultural achievements of the Naram-Sin period, evidenced by artistic productions, literary compositions, and architectural innovations found at sites throughout the empire, demonstrate sophisticated synthesis of diverse cultural traditions that created distinctive imperial styles while accommodating regional preferences and local customs. Archaeological evidence for international recognition of Naram-Sin's power includes diplomatic correspondence with foreign rulers, tribute payments from distant territories, and the adoption of Akkadian administrative practices by neighboring states, confirming the empire's dominant position in ancient Near Eastern politics. The study of Naram-Sin's religious policies, documented in temple inscriptions, ritual texts, and votive objects found throughout the empire, reveals systematic efforts to integrate diverse religious traditions into imperial frameworks while promoting the divine status of the ruler as a unifying ideological principle. Modern archaeological research using remote sensing technology, ground-penetrating radar, and satellite imagery has identified numerous previously unknown sites associated with Naram-Sin's expansion, revealing the full scope of imperial territorial control and the sophisticated settlement patterns that supported Akkadian administration and frontier regions. The military innovations documented in archaeological context from Naram-Sin's reign include advanced weapons technology, improved fortification designs, and tactical innovations that enabled Akkadian armies to defeat opponents using traditional Bronze Age warfare methods, establishing military superiority that would be maintained for several generations. Administrative archives from provincial centers established during Naram-Sin's expansion contain detailed records of local governance, taxation systems, and legal procedures that reveal sophisticated approaches to managing diverse populations, while maintaining imperial unity and ensuring effective resource extraction for central purposes. The economic prosperity of the empire during Naram-Sin's reign is evidenced by archaeological findings of luxury goods, monumental construction projects, and expanded trade networks that demonstrate the wealth generated by imperial control over crucial commercial routes and resource-rich territories. The gradual decline and eventual collapse of the Akkadian Empire represents one of history's most dramatic examples of imperial fragmentation, with archaeological evidence revealing a complex process of political disintegration, economic disruption, and social transformation that unfolded over several decades in the late 23rd and early 22nd centuries BC. The causes of Akkadian collapse have been debated by scholars for decades, with archaeological evidence supporting multiple contributing factors including climate change, internal political instability, external military pressure, administrative breakdown, and the inherent challenges of maintaining control over such a vast and diverse territory with Bronze Age technology and communication systems. Paleoclimatic reconstructions based on isotope analysis of ancient organic materials, sediment cores from lakes and rivers, and archaeological evidence of settlement abandonment suggest that the Akkadian collapse coincided with a period of severe drought and climate deterioration that lasted for approximately 2 centuries, creating agricultural crises that undermine the economic foundations of imperial power. Archaeological investigation of late Akkadian sites reveals evidence of defensive preparations, emergency food storage, population movements, and administrative reorganization that suggest imperial authorities were aware of mounting challenges and attempted to implement reforms, though these efforts ultimately proved insufficient to prevent systemic collapse. The archaeological record of the collapse period shows a distinctive pattern of site abandonment. In marginal agricultural areas, the concentration of remaining populations in more defensible locations, and changes in material culture that reflect economic stress and the breakdown of imperial distribution systems. Administrative archives from the final decades of Akkadian rule contain increasingly frequent references to military threats, tribute defaults, provincial rebellions, and resource shortages, documenting the progressive deterioration of imperial control and the inability of central authorities to maintain effective governance across their vast territories. Carbon-14 dating of destruction layers at Akkadian sites has provided precise chronological frameworks for understanding the timing and sequence of imperial collapse, revealing that different regions experienced the end of Akkadian control at different times, suggesting a gradual rather than sudden breakdown of imperial authority. The study of post-collapse settlement patterns reveals the emergence of new political entities that claim succession from the Akkadian Empire, while actually representing fundamentally different forms of political organization, including city-states, tribal confederations, and regional kingdoms that competed for control over former imperial territories. Archaeological evidence for the survival of Akkadian cultural elements after the empire's political collapse includes the continued use of Akkadian language in official documents, the preservation of Akkadian artistic styles and architectural traditions, and the maintenance of commercial networks that had been established during the imperial period. Isotope analysis of human remains from post-collapse sites reveal significant population movements and demographic changes that reflect the social disruption caused by imperial breakdown, with evidence of refugee movements, military recruitment, and the establishment of new communities by displaced populations. The archaeological investigation of sites that experienced destruction during the collapse period has revealed evidence of warfare, siege activities, and urban violence that suggests the end of Akkadian rule was marked by significant military conflict between competing claimants to imperial succession and local populations seeking independence. Modern archaeological research using advanced dating techniques and scientific analysis has refined our understanding of the collapse chronology, revealing that different aspects of imperial civilization declined at different rates, with administrative systems failing more rapidly than economic networks, and political control collapsing before cultural traditions. The study of environmental archaeology during the collapse period reveals evidence of ecological stress, including soil salinization, deforestation, and the abandonment of irrigation systems, suggesting that environmental degradation both contributed to and resulted from the breakdown of imperial administration. Archaeological evidence for attempts at imperial restoration includes the construction of new fortifications, the establishment of emergency administrative centers, and the implementation of desperate measures to maintain territorial control. Though these efforts ultimately failed to reverse the fundamental causes of imperial decline, the legacy of the Akkadian Empire's collapse is evidenced by archaeological finds throughout the ancient Near East that show the long-term impact of imperial breakdown on regional development, including the adoption of defensive architectural styles, changes in settlement patterns, and modifications in commercial relationships that reflected the new political realities of a fragmented post-imperial landscape. The archaeological investigation of successor states that emerged from Akkadian collapse reveals both continuities and innovations in political organization, administrative systems, and cultural practices, demonstrating how imperial legacies were adapted to new circumstances while also showing the limitations of attempts to recreate imperial unity. The archaeological rediscovery and modern scholarly investigation of the Akkadian Empire represents one of the most significant achievements in Near Eastern archaeology and Assyriology, transforming our understanding of Bronze Age civilization and revealing the sophisticated nature of humanity's first imperial experiment. Through the careful excavation and analysis of material remains buried for millennia, the systematic archaeological exploration of Mesopotamian sites began in the mid-19th century, when European scholars and diplomats, motivated by biblical scholarship and imperial competition, initiated large-scale excavations that would gradually reveal the existence and extent of pre-classical civilizations that had been previously unknown to Western scholarship. The decipherment of cuneiform script, achieved through the collaborative efforts of scholars such as Georg Friedrich Grotefend, Henry Rawlinson, and Jules Oppert during the 19th century, provided the key to understanding the thousands of tablets and inscriptions that emerged from archaeological excavations, revealing not only the Akkadian language but also the historical records that documented imperial administration, military campaigns, and cultural achievements. Archaeological methodology in Mesopotamian studies has evolved dramatically since the early days of treasure hunting and monument collecting, with modern excavations employing sophisticated stratigraphic techniques, scientific analysis of artifacts, and environmental samples, and interdisciplinary approaches that integrate archaeological evidence with textual sources, environmental data, and comparative studies of other ancient civilizations. The establishment of major archaeological expeditions by institutions such as the British Museum, the Louvre, the University of Pennsylvania, and the Oriental Institute of Chicago created systematic research programs that have continued for over a century, gradually accumulating the evidence base necessary to reconstruct Akkadian history, culture, and society with unprecedented detail and accuracy. Carbon-14 dating, thermoluminescence analysis, and other scientific dating techniques have revolutionized Akkadian chronology, providing precise absolute dates that have resolved long-standing scholarly debates about the timing of imperial events, and enabling accurate correlation between archaeological evidence and textual sources. The development of specialized Akkadian dictionaries, grammatical analyses, and textual databases has enabled scholars to translate and interpret the vast corpus of cuneiform literature, revealing not only historical narratives but also legal codes, commercial documents, religious texts, and literary compositions that illuminate all aspects of Akkadian civilization. Modern archaeological survey techniques, including satellite imagery analysis, ground-penetrating radar, magnetometry, and geographic information systems (GIS), have identified hundreds of previously unknown Akkadian sites and revealed landscape scale settlement patterns that demonstrate the true extent and organization of imperial territories. The interdisciplinary collaboration between archaeologists, historians, linguists, environmental scientists, and specialists in materials analysis has created comprehensive understanding of Akkadian civilization that integrates material culture, studies with textual analysis, environmental reconstruction, and comparative imperial studies. International archaeological cooperation has enabled large-scale research projects that transcend modern national boundaries, allowing scholars to study Akkadian sites across Iraq, Syria, Turkey, and Iran as components of a unified imperial system, rather than isolated regional phenomena. The digitization of archaeological records, museum collections, and cuneiform archives has created accessible databases that enable global scholarly collaboration and have democratized access to Akkadian studies, allowing researchers worldwide to contribute to ongoing investigations and interpretations. Archaeological training programs in academic institutions throughout the Middle East have developed local expertise in Akkadian studies, creating scholarly communities that bring indigenous perspectives to the interpretation of ancient Mesopotamian civilization and ensuring the continuation of research despite political instabilities and conflicts. The integration of Akkadian archaeological research with broader studies of ancient imperialism, state formation, and civilizational development has positioned Akkadian studies at the center of debates about the origins of complex societies, the nature of early globalization, and the factors that contribute to imperial success and failure. Conservation efforts at major Akkadian sites have employed advanced techniques for preserving ancient architecture, protecting cuneiform tablets from deterioration, and maintaining archaeological integrity while accommodating the needs of modern research and public education. The public presentation of Akkadian archaeological discoveries through museum exhibitions, educational programs, and digital media has brought ancient Mesopotamian civilization to global audiences, inspiring continued interest in archaeological research and support for preservation efforts. Modern reanalysis of artifacts and sites excavated during the early period of Akkadian archaeology has revealed information that was missed by earlier investigators, demonstrating the value of ongoing research and the continuous evolution of archaeological interpretation as new methods and theoretical frameworks are developed. The application of advanced scientific techniques to Akkadian archaeological materials continues to yield new insights, with recent studies using DNA analysis, isotope geochemistry, and materials science providing unprecedented detail about ancient diet, health, population movements, and technological processes. The enduring legacy and profound influence of the Akkadian Empire on subsequent civilizations throughout the ancient Near East and beyond represents one of history's most significant examples of imperial impact transcending political boundaries and temporal limitations, with archaeological evidence revealing the persistence of Akkadian innovations in administration, law, culture, and technology across millennia of political change and cultural transformation. The Akkadian language itself became the diplomatic lingua franca of the ancient Near East for over a millennium after the empire's collapse, with cuneiform tablets written in Akkadian found at sites from Egypt to Iran, demonstrating the empire's role in creating the world's first international communication system and establishing precedents for imperial languages that would influence later empires throughout history. Archaeological investigation of successor states and civilizations reveals the widespread adoption of Akkadian administrative techniques, legal principles, and governmental structures by later empires including the Babylonian, Assyrian, and Persian kingdoms, with evidence showing direct institutional continuity in areas such as provincial organization, taxation systems, and military administration. The artistic and architectural legacy of the Akkadian Empire is evidenced by the continued use of imperial iconographic themes, monumental building techniques, and decorative styles throughout subsequent periods of Near Eastern history, with Akkadian artistic innovations appearing in modified forms in the palaces and temples of later rulers, who sought to legitimize their authority by connecting themselves to the imperial tradition. Legal codes and judicial procedures developed during the Akkadian period provided the foundation for later Mesopotamian law, including the famous Code of Hammurabi, which incorporated many Akkadian legal principles while expanding their application, demonstrating how imperial legal innovations could outlast political structures and influence legal development across centuries. The archaeological study of commercial practices throughout the ancient Near East reveals the persistence of Akkadian trading techniques, standardized weights and measures, and commercial law long after the empire's collapse, with evidence suggesting that Akkadian commercial innovations became so fundamental to interregional trade that they continued to be used even by peoples who had no direct political connection to the empire. Religious and mythological traditions that originated or were synthesized during the Akkadian period continued to influence Near Eastern spirituality for thousands of years, with Akkadian religious texts, mythological narratives, and ceremonial practices being preserved and adapted by later civilizations that maintain cultural continuity with the imperial tradition. The technological innovations developed during the Akkadian period, including advances in metallurgy, agricultural techniques, and construction methods, spread throughout the ancient world and continued to influence technological development long after the empire's political collapse, demonstrating how imperial innovation could transcend political boundaries and contribute to broader human progress. Educational systems and intellectual traditions established during the Akkadian period, particularly the preservation and transmission of cuneiform literature, created scholarly traditions that maintained ancient knowledge and enabled its transmission to later civilizations, with Akkadian literary works continuing to be copied and studied throughout the ancient period. Modern comparative imperial studies have identified numerous parallels between Akkadian administrative innovations and the governmental systems of later empires throughout world history, suggesting that the Akkadian Empire established fundamental patterns of imperial organization that would be independently rediscovered or consciously emulated by imperial builders across different cultures and time periods. The archaeological evidence for Akkadian influence on urban planning, architectural design, and city organization reveals lasting impact on settlement patterns throughout the Near East, with evidence of Akkadian planning principles appearing in cities built centuries after the empire's collapse. Cultural synthesis achieved during the Akkadian period, particularly the integration of Sumerian and Semitic traditions, created cultural frameworks that continue to influence Near Eastern civilization throughout antiquity, demonstrating how imperial cultural policies could create lasting social and intellectual structures that survive political change. The memory of Akkadian imperial achievement, preserved in later historical traditions and literary works, provided inspiration and legitimacy for subsequent imperial projects throughout Near Eastern history, with rulers from Hammurabi to Cyrus the Great claiming connection to Akkadian precedents as justification for their own imperial ambitions. Archaeological research has revealed that the collapse of the Akkadian Empire created power vacuums and political fragmentation that influenced patterns of state formation and interstate relations throughout the ancient Near East for centuries, demonstrating how imperial collapse could have consequences as far-reaching as imperial success. The study of Akkadian imperial legacy through archaeological and textual evidence has contributed significantly to modern understanding of imperial dynamics, state formation, and the factors that contribute to long-term institutional survival, providing insights relevant to contemporary discussions of globalization, political integration, and cultural transmission. Thus concludes the comprehensive history of the Akkadian Empire, humanity's first great imperial experiment that established fundamental patterns of political organization, cultural synthesis, and international relations that would influence human civilization for millennia to come.